So we'll go here. Going to copy link. Well, I'm just finding you real quick, and then I'll be ready to rock and roll. And then I'll
Oh,
start
you're
up
good,
one.
man.
Hi, Mike, and then coaching.
It's here. Hang on. I'll put it inside of the chat. Dude. Chat. Where's
Yeah.
the chat button? There it is. Studio chat. Oh, wait. Let's go. Will.
Happy New Year's, Chelsea. So I just dropped the link right here to you. You can be able to see it, and then you can be able to add it to yours. You just click on it, and you'll be able to share it to your page.
Ah, got it. Sweet.
Oh.
Go to this content isn't available right now. So just go ahead and grab the link and actually.
Oh, yeah. You should be able
Let's
to
see. Copy. Hang on.
Second. Boom.
Now.
Well, right now what I'm doing is I'm letting the audience know. Right now I'm sending Mike a link so he can be able to put it on his Facebook. This is the first time I'm actually able to do this.
It's a new year. We're trying new things.
New year, new things.
All right.
Happy New Year's. Who's on right now?
Let's see.
Oh no, there's two people from YouTube.
Perfect. All right. Let's see.
Let's go. Make sure I put the timestamp on this. Hi, Candace.
There we go, Will.
All right, you good?
I am all set. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate it. So I'll put a little bit of the timestamp. It's me. So good morning, good afternoon, whenever this message reaches you. I have the pleasure of speaking to Mike Foster. Mike Foster and I, we met on the other day of a pod match. Nice guy. He's has a really good, unique story. It's a story about like a comeback, at least in my eyes, about regaining trust with his family, is the strength, healing, and I think you guys are going to be wooed by his voice. And well, how you
I'll
doing,
try to
Mr.
keep
Mike?
the wooing to a minimum. My wife might not be okay with me wooing too many people.
So how are you doing, Mr. Mike?
I'm doing great, Will. Oh man, happy New Year! What a way to start the year. I appreciate the invitation to come join you and just encourage people. I mean, as we start out, dude, I don't know about you, but 2025 had some stuff that kind of, kick you down, beat you up a bit, but it's one of, hey, new beginnings. Every day is new. So appreciate you letting me join you, Will.
Yeah, 2025. I was reflecting on it. I should be reflecting on 2025 all week. It was a very tough, grinding year, and I was thinking about what am I going to name next year, and next year is more of a transition period. This year was the year of the or last year was the year of the grind. This year is going to be more of a pivotal, instrumental period in my life.
Mhm.
And to start it out, I guess we'll start out the conversation of, tell me about how you and your family started to reconnect, and how did that look like?
Man, that was one, honestly, Will, I didn't know that it was going to happen. So, kind of some of the background from there in growing up, went through a lot of childhood abuse. And when I say childhood, all the time that I was home, even into my teens, right? And that stuff really formed who I was. Very low self esteem, um, angry because of the world, the way the world had treated me. And I think you and I can both look at it, anybody that's listening can look at it and go, a dude that is kind of a cross between Eeyore, who's got a victim perspective, woe is me, and the Hulk, where it's like that anger, that rage from being the victim is taken out on the world, does not make a great combination either as a husband, a father, in any role. It's really not healthy. So fast forward, um, I would say my oldest was probably 16, 17 years old. I'm the father of 4 adult children now. Um, but back then, my oldest was 17. And that was when, Will, I really started genuinely working to change me. Before that, when I would work to change, it was more of a manipulation or like what's the thing that it's like pressure cooker,
Hmm.
trying to let the steam out of the volatility. It's like, okay, hey, things are rough with the wife. It's like, dude, she's upset. Okay, let me do something that kind of brings the level down. I didn't know how to genuinely change. And honestly, I was afraid that I couldn't genuinely change. So getting to that point of starting to say, hey, I'm going to work on healing myself and going forward from there, you know, um, out of desperation just to start, you know, being a different guy. Um, dude, I was all kinds of just, I hated who I was and where I was in life. But I also saw like my kids would go to my wife and they'd talk and converse and coming to me, it's like, like we already talked about, I'm not safe. No wonder my kids aren't coming to me and going, hey, dad, I'm having this problem. Will you help me figure it out? It's like, nope. If I go to dad, he's like a powder keg. He's just going to go off and this is going to be an issue I don't want to deal with on top of the issue I'm already dealing with. So I was an outsider in my own family, if that makes sense. I wasn't um, I wasn't at the cool table, which is where you would hope to be. Um, and it was out of that desperation, man, that I started working on me. It honestly wasn't even one of those, Will, where it was looking at it and going, if I heal, I'm going to reclaim these relationships, right? They'll be restored, there'll be healing, and kumbaya, will be leave it to Beaver. There was none of that, man. Um, it was honestly just, I knew things needed to change for me in order to even continue on because what I saw as like, we'll call it retirement, me further in life was I'm in a studio apartment. It's dark. I'm sitting in a chair watching the TV. There is no family around. There are no friends around. I'm isolated. I'm alone. And it's something that many men today actually face. That was where I thought I was going. And I thought I was the only one that was relegated to that. Like that was my path, and nobody else could relate or even, you know, dream of that kind of a nightmare. It's not a dream, but, nobody else could envision it. In starting that healing process, my wife was the one that extended the trust first because she's like, I can see that you're truly trying to make change. It's not perfect. Far from it, man. There were days where it was like, hey, everything goes great. And there were other days, dude, I could not get a thing right. It was right back to the old patterns, old behaviors, things things would go off the rails. Not surprising. It's a new habit. It's new, thought process. It's a new heart. It's new in every way, all the way around. Um, and so my wife was the first one to extend the trust. And, she just kept telling me the kids will get there if you're consistent, but you've got to be consistent for you, not for them. And so, you know, I kept going, kept going. And the thing to keep in mind, Will, is these are my children. The only way that they've ever known me is angry, volatile, you know, g- go off at them, right? They become the target. And it's not my intention, man. That's just how I knew, how I reacted, what I had experienced growing up. That to me was normal. Um, I didn't want to hurt them, but again, that's what I knew. Um, Going forward, it took time, and it's not just the person making the change that's putting in the work, right? If you're working to trust somebody, that is work on your part as well. So while we're sitting here talking and it's like, hey Mike, you changed, you had this transformation, don't forget it's my wife, my children, everybody around me that had to make a decision whether they're going to trust and put in their own work, or if they're just going to say, see you dad, I don't care, you've hurt me, I'm gone. I was really fortunate, I still am fortunate, Will, like I don't miss it. I don't miss what has happened being the thing, like I've won the lottery, because I know other men that they've put in that work, but they still don't have those relationships. And it could be yet, it could be never. But do you want to stay where you're at is really the core question. And I didn't want to. So that was what set me on the path. And it's not like a second chance, man. Will, this is like 2,937 541 chance. um it's I'm fortunate, you know what I mean. It's one of those of, i didn't I wasn't guaranteed to have what I experienced today, what I have. um but that choice is there for each guy. Do you want to stay where you're at, or do you want a chance at something different? I wanted a chance at something different, and I would never want to go back to where I was, but I also never thought I was worthy of being where I'm at now. So there's a there's a whole slew of things that changed along the way to get me where I'm at today.
I like to look at it as when we're healing and they're healing and we're both changing, it's renegotiating the relationship. Because I was speaking of, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about most of the time we rather actually be in a common hell than an unfamiliar heaven. We don't know how to
Yeah.
actually exist with a person, and we know that they could be a lovable, nice person, but we are primed for that limbic part of our brain, the survival meshes of saying, well, it's this time of night, this is bad things happen, or this type of smell, or
Mm.
X, Y, and Z. And I think it's awesome that you and your family were able to start to connect and start
Yeah.
to renegotiate that. You mentioned about your childhood, and that kind of
Mhm.
primed you to become the Hulk and Eeyore put together. I'm still trying to figure out that superpower. It's like, is it going to swing a punch and then fall asleep while it's hitting a building? It's kind of, that would be kind of interesting to me.
It There was power. I wouldn't necessarily call it a superpower, I think, unless it was self-harm, and harm to those around me, because I couldn't differentiate what was going on. I was very reactionary. I just knew how to react in rage. That's what I grew up with. So, um, at the time of growing up, I did not realize that I have dyslexia. As a kid, like I'm not the same as my friends. So already in elementary school, you're like, I'm the oddball. I don't fit. I don't belong. And when you're at home being told, hey, you're a mistake. We didn't want you. You're not going to amount to anything. There's physical violence, arguing. Whoever can argue the loudest is the one that wins the argument. But that anger is almost like the love language of the house, if you want to call it that. It's a dysfunctional love. Um, Growing up with that is then what set me on a pattern going forward where I didn't think that I had value. I didn't think that I was worth investing in for somebody else, much less myself. It's like, why would I do anything when I know that I'm just worthless? I don't matter. Those are the messages that I was told enough, and they start then taking root and become the foundation of your beliefs, and your actions come out of your beliefs. So it's like you can imagine the actions that I had were not great. I remember being in the parking lot with my wife at the time. She was my girlfriend. And dude, we're just having a conversation. Something in it triggered me. And from there, it was like a NASA rocket. It's like, there goes the launch. Look at him go. And dude, I jumped in my car and I peeled out because I didn't know how to have a regular conversation. It was just, how much rage can I show? One, as like to hurt somebody, but also to protect. And I can look at that in hindsight. At the time, I didn't get it. It was almost like a workflow, right? You kind of have this, if this happens, then these happen. These things happen afterwards. And it was just those dominoes. I mean, it was like an AI automated workflow, Will. It was just something, set Mike off and he's gone. It was learning that there were other emotions and that those other emotions were okay to feel. Um, there was a lot to learn beyond just, the petri dish of the toxic environment that I was growing up in. Um, it wasn't something that I ever wanted my children to experience. In fact, Will, I always said, I will never be like my parents. You want to guess exactly what I turned out like? My parents. You do what you've learned. And that was what I had learned and repeated. And once I allowed myself to be in that uncomfortable and vulnerable spot to to say like, hey, I'm going to check and see what's going on. Maybe I am the problem, but is there something different? That was when things really started to change.
When I'm thinking about what you were saying about how you become like your parents, I think about your generation because you're a little bit older than me, and
Mhm.
then their parents' generation, where a lot of yelling, hitting was the easiest way to have that type of compliance, but there wasn't a discussion of the emotions or what was going on, what was really the root of the problem. I was just trying to solve the situation instead of the problem. When you started to look at things differently so you could behave differently for your wife and your
Mhm.
kids, how did you start to do the work? How did you start to prime yourself so when X happens, instead of going right to Z, you're able to stop at X or stop before T? How did that look like
Yeah.
for you?
In the beginning, it was stopping at why. As much as I didn't want to, go that route, it was learning to react differently. A lot of it was being vigilant, trying to be self aware when that wasn't something that I had really ever done in the past. It was looking and going, okay, you almost put yourself in a foxhole emotionally, and you're just trying to be aware of what's going on. And in the beginning, it was really rough because it was like very draining. You know, you're constantly on and looking around and going, okay, my son said this. How do I react? Trying to think through, okay, if I was in his shoes, how would I want me to react? You know, my wife just said, hey, we have a bill. This needs to be paid. She's not coming to me as an attack with all the extra stuff that's in my head of, you know, hey, you don't make enough money, you're not enough of a man. Like, she's not coming with all that. She's trying to just present, we have a bill. I want you to have a heads up so that I'm not paying it, and, you know, there's less money in the bank account, or I don't pay it, we get the power shut off, right? She's trying to be proactive, not demeaning or attacking or belittling in any way. It's just information. So I had to watch how I'm receiving it and how I'm processing it. And dude, I swear it felt like I was um, in the emotional gym, you know, 16 hours a day because it's, you're, like I said, you're always on, and that being on just takes your energy and drains it so fast. Um, so in the beginning, I had to make sure, one, that I'm vigilant, but two, that I'm getting enough sleep, because otherwise, when I have nothing left, Will, the default comes right back. There's no question about it. The Hulk is coming out, and everything that I have worked to do in a healthy way comes tumbling down. And unfortunately, that negative reaction is then, you know, taking it back, you know, for my children. They're like, dad hasn't changed, you know, or them at best questioning, has dad really changed? So it was anything but smooth, but the self awareness was key. And the other thing, I had never experienced this. Let me rephrase that. I had rarely experienced it, and never from myself, was grace. And so giving myself grace when I wasn't perfect, rather than telling myself, oh, look, you can't change. This is the same thing. You know, this is just reinforcing the beliefs, right? The ones that I had before. I had to, like, you know, stop, really think about it. Is this true? No. I'm tired. You know, I'm hungry. I'm isolated, alone, whatever the case was. I just need to be more, you know, mindful of that, and work to not get into those places where it became like this, uh, you know, slimy, slimy slide. And I'm just, you know, all the way back down, you know, just like playing shoots and ladders, right? If I ended up in the wrong place, man, I was going backwards. So
It's crazy when you're talking about, like, I saw whack-a-mole in my head of like, hey, I could be able to handle this fucking whack-a-mole. Nope. All right, I failed this time. I'm the biggest. And I'm just seeing like Billy Madison going through my head right now. Actually, Happy Gilmore. And it's like, I think so many people can relate to that, because it's like, shit, I'm trying. Why the fuck can't I get this? Until that one point where you're just like, oh, grace.
yeah,
What is this magical thing? It's, I am not going to be perfect. Nobody's expecting me to be perfect on the first try. They want me to be perfect, but Jesus, is this so difficult to find it? When you started working on your grace, how did the conversations happen between you and your wife? Like, being able to expose yourself emotionally and mentally to her.
very slowly and cautiously, because one of the messages that my parents had given me is if you're asking questions, you're a failure. Like, I don't want to fail. I don't want to be labeled as a failure. And so, in seeing like that, I would go to my wife and say, hey, this is the struggle that I'm going through. This is kind of where the thoughts are at. How are you meaning to present this? Like, what are you trying to really say? That was hard, in the fact that I already thought like I'd stepped into failing. So I'm fighting to be vulnerable, but I'm also fighting a belief system that tells me, hey, in you talking to your wife and being vulnerable, dude, she's gonna bail on you. She sees you as a failure. You suck. Dude, it's fighting a battle on multiple fronts. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just one thing of, hey, I have to be vulnerable. there's a lot of other voices and thoughts and negative things that were coming at me. But again, it's one of those, I hated being where I was and who I was. And that was a thing in the beginning, was not being that person, because I couldn't see anything else. It was just not being that was the motivator. As I continued on, then it became, who can I be, and seeing things from a different point of view, instead of running from, I don't want to be this. And those conversations with my wife, I mean, you want to talk about grace. Dude, she showed me so much grace, Will. I mean, I would be like, this is what you said. She's just like, no, this is what I said. How did you hear it? This is what I heard in that. She's like, what's fueling that? I'm like, what you said. I mean, dude, it was like talking with a toddler, because I was emotionally a toddler, Will. Craziest dang thing. But I'm an adult. And if you and I had talked, Will, I felt like a 6-year-old. Emotionally, internally, I felt like a child as an adult, because I hadn't developed. I was stunted by my home environment emotionally, and stayed there until things started to heal. And then it's like, oh, hey, I'm an adult, internal and externally. This is a novel concept. But dude, there was a whole lot that had to be put on the line in order to keep moving. I mean, it's like, do you want to stay where you're at? Do you want something else? I hated where I was. So as uncomfortable as it was, it's like, keep moving forward, see what is possible. And, if my wife had handled it differently, Will, where she hadn't treated it where, let's work through this together, I'm here with you, instead of, trying to undermine or say things negatively, I don't know where things would have gone. I don't know that I would have stuck with it to get to the tipping point, because it's like, you're facing the doubt of, is it possible? And is it possible for me? Am I worthy of it? Those kind of doubts, man, are really strong. And it's almost one of those of, trying to move through life with iron weights. You're just shackled. And until those weights lessen, or you're freed from them, you don't know that there's something on the other side.
I had this image in my head thinking about when you were talking about emotions. First, it was Gestalt therapy. Before, when you were talking about being overwhelmed and cluttered, I was thinking about acceptance commitment therapy. Like the happiness trap was a really good one about being able to sit with the emotions. But truly, I never had this real vision to go in my head of. I remember being talked to by my therapist. Who are you trying to play catch up with? Who's this race for? Who are you trying to be up to? And then I'm like, while I'm listening, it sounded like you were born with 2 arms and 1 leg, and you navigated up to that point with 2 arms, 1 leg. But then God gave you this other leg that you have not used so atrophied. You have blood and you've been giving it energy, but now I'm telling you to go walk and you're trying to run. You don't even know actually
Mhm.
how your brain is wired to your leg. You don't know how to be able to connect to it. And it sounds like you're just trying to run, and it's more frustrating because it hurts to be touched. It hurts to be able to move. It is tiring. You're trying to think about your brain connecting it to your legs so you can be able to walk, let alone trying to run. And and it sounded like you had one of the best coaches to have in your life,
Mm.
which was your wife, was like, hey, this is what we got to do. Mike,
Yeah.
we're going to go back to, we're at the cooing phase. What's going on? Like, remember when your babies were cooing? You had no idea what they wanted. They want a bottle, if they pooped their pants, or you're like, shit, do they want food? I have no idea. It's like, what are you hearing? Well, I'm hearing this. What did I say? You said this. Why are you actually getting this from this? And you're like, stop asking me so many damn questions. I'm really confused.
Oh my gosh. You must have video of those first conversations, Will, because that was so spot on. It was like, can we just get to the core? Is this so difficult to like figure things out? Yep, it is 100%. And oh my gosh, Will, like, I remember one of the craziest things was growing up at home. My my dad was the one that worked. My mom did not. She stayed at home. And my dad was working as a security guard. He had retired from the Navy, wasn't making a whole lot of money at the time. He's got two kids, two boys. Um, Dude, I remember Will just like there was not enough food in the house. And at one time, they'd actually taken a chain and put a lock on the fridge to keep us away from food. So you can imagine that it was one of those that um, there was an unhealthy alignment with food, right? A whole relationship and everything. So when my wife and I got married, we had kids. When I started making money in my career, I then bought a freezer, filled it up with meat, and the the knowledge of knowing that there was food in a freezer will for me meant security. Now here's the part that was a disconnect. You cannot leave meat in a freezer for over 5 years and have good meat. Now you know that, Will. I was not thinking logically. This is part of the journey of seeing things in a realistic and healthy manner. I didn't have that. My wife and I had the power go out. And when it went out, it was like, oh my gosh, we got to do something with this meat. Dude, we found out the meat was bad. There was no recovering it. But it was a realization through that event because of the self awareness that had been, practiced along the years of I'm storing food, even if it's not edible, because that for me means that I'm in a safe place. I'm not at home where the food is locked away, kept from me. I'm not a prisoner of that anymore. So now I'm in charge. It's a security and a power thing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And as we heal and we practice these things, we're able to see new things to continue to reveal and unravel like what actions we have that are going on. Will, I never looked at that freezer and went, this here, that is an absolute sign that, that I'm crushing it, that I'm safe and I'm doing well. It wasn't until something happened that it's like, then, oh, hey, you've got this over here, buddy, that, is a false sense of security. that you're doing well. You actually need to work on, you know, this belief, this trigger, the experiences. And as crazy as it sounds, that was so freeing, where it was like, oh, I found something else. Um, I hated the desert, Will. The desert didn't do anything. I mean, I wasn't like I went on a hiking trip and, was dehydrated or starving or cut off a limb or anything like that. But what came about was, and this is while my wife and I are driving from Kansas to California, a lot of desert, a lot of conversation, was that when I was at home, we lived in a duplex, right? So there's two different halves, almost like a mini apartment. And my mom, because she was paranoid schizophrenic, did not want the neighbors to hear what was going on, because she thought that everybody was watching her. Our life was so boring, there was nothing to watch. But in her head, that was her belief. And so she would have my dad put my brother and I in the car. The four of us would drive out to the desert, and she would tear us up one side and down the other, berate us, just list out all our transgressions of what we're not doing right or what we've done wrong. I did not realize the association until years later, when I'm able to see past all of like that emotional, like it's almost like an insulation, right? It keeps you from seeing this stuff until you work through it and you're in a healthier place to be able to see it. But when I saw it, it was like, holy crap, that's been staring me in the face and I could never have told you. But dude, all this stuff, when you begin working through it, isn't going to reveal itself. It's down the road. And when you start getting rid of that stuff and being able to see it, it is the most freeing thing. I don't have to hate the desert. I can go to the desert and be like, hey, there's cool trails here. I can go mountain biking or dune buggy or whatever. It opens up more of life to be lived in, instead of confining us to this prison with these untrue beliefs. So dude, yeah, it's work through it. It's worth it, if nothing else, for the life that's available to you down the road.
I love how you just talked about how a place like you talked about the desert. I think about what happens when that smell hits you randomly. Like how it actually just throws you in that weird like mood and you're like, "Oh, it was because of the dust." But when with your part of your healing from like
Mhm.
understanding about how your mom behaved, how your dad behaved, to lock in the refrigerator in the freezer, and how do you feel after learning about why they, or do you even know why they did that?
Not from their lips. I don't know why. Um, in looking at it from this time back, I think it was to try and control things. Just like I learned fear, they operated from a place of fear. So the fear of not having enough money, not having enough food. Hey, if my teen boys continue to chow through all the stuff, there's not going to be enough to get through till the next paycheck.
Hmm.
I can understand it. And it's one of those, while I don't agree with what they did, I can understand the fears that they were living under. There were other ways to take care of it. But, it's like, okay, they did the best that they could. I get it. It's a it's been a whole journey in and of like forgiving, right? Dude, I so wanted to see my parents suffer for the hurt that I had. You know what I mean? Like, as far as, you cut me 12 times. I want you to be cut 12 times. that kind of thing. I want justice. But it was understanding, Will, when I'm kind of like the meat in a sandwich, right? I've got my parents on one side and I want justice for what they've done. And I've got my children on the other side and I want mercy for the things that I did incorrectly that hurt them. Okay. If I'm wanting mercy for the mistakes I made, did my parents make mistakes? Yes. Would they want mercy? I would say so. So in forgiving them, it wasn't to lighten the burden on them, to like not say, hey, what you did was right. It was more to free me, Will,
Mhm.
because that anger that I had that wanted justice, that was screaming, you did this hurt. When I looked at the hurt that I caused my wife and children, I chose to look at it and go, okay, how would I want to be treated if I was in my parents' place? It's not forgetting and saying, hey, I'm open, you come do that to me again, but it's freeing myself and going, I'm no longer going to be pissed, angry, wanting that justice, that vindication, to see them suffer because they had no freaking clue. Like,
Mm.
they're clueless. Like, I told my mom at one point, I was like, do you realize how you have hurt me through what you've done? Oh, that was nothing. That dismissiveness, she's not going to get the message. So if I wait until she goes, hey, I understand, I'm going to wait forever, Will. And I'm the one that's imprisoned during that time frame. So understanding, um, you know, I guess coming to a realization of what I want is probably what my parents would want, even if they don't know it or aren't willing to acknowledge it. Um, but with that, I also put in boundaries, which was something that was totally new to me. I didn't know you could have boundaries. Um, it was, instead of using anger to create a wall of protection, I was now able to not even step into that situation and to go, sorry, that's that's your situation to deal with. I'm not entering into it. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
you don't want to get, run over. You don't If you don't want to get run over, you don't enter the freeway trying to run across it, right? It's like you build a bridge to go over. So that was kind of the difference in learning new tools, new ways to deal with things, and understanding I didn't have to play by somebody else's rules. Um, so there was a lot of learning how to deal with myself, but also other people along the way, um, that really brought things to where they are now. And I'm still learning stuff, Will, where it's like, I think about, um, a couple years ago, we have like somebody that comes around for the utilities outside. They don't ever knock on the door, but they're just looking at your utilities. Dude, Will, there was a time when my wife and I were first married. Every month, we're getting the whole, you're past due, you're going to be evicted, your power is going to be shut off, all that stuff. Because of the repetition of that occurrence, it created a fear in me of, oh my gosh, there's somebody reading the power or the gas or whatever it is. And the first instinct was, oh crap, they're going to shut it off. I run to my computer and look and see, have I paid? Am I paid up? Even when I knew I had taken care of the bills on the 1st or the 15th, like, I knew it, Will, but that fear was like, you best go check. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay a reconnection fee. You're going to have to pay whatever fees. It's just one of those of, um, almost cutting the cord to that sense, right? I can see a utility vehicle without it triggering a fear or emotion in me that, oh my gosh, my utilities are going to be shut off. So there's a lot to learn. But again, I want to say this. The thing to really pay attention to is the hope. I'm not still stuck in that place. What we are experiencing today is not what you experience for all life, right? There's something different, but it's not like the flick of a switch. It takes some time and it takes being intentional. But what there is afterwards is so worth it.
After it's you don't need to go to the 7, 8 on the heightened scale. You can stay at a 4 and the dig just go by. The emotions doesn't have to be arisen as much. You're much more peaceful with your family. You're much more peaceful with yourself, and you're able to have more of a healthier day than actually being aroused based off of, like you said, a utility truck of, oh my God, the need, that sense of urgency to be able to take care of yourself. It raises up our stress levels pretty damn good. And it's what's odd is when you're able to finally get to that point where it's like, cool. I see a utility truck. This used to make me aroused. I am so grateful I can see this and not actually get heightened. I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's healthy. The I really appreciate the way that you talked about the boundaries, because boundaries are ways that we can show people love. Because if you know that they're going to take, or not even know if they're going to take, if they're going to test your boundaries, you might have to reinforce them. But it's a way for you not to get walked all over, and you don't have that master slave mentality where you become extremely resentful for. But it sounds like the journey. It was a lot of pain, but then at the same time, it's almost like you're able to see other people's situations of like, hey, oh, I remember that. I remember actually being like upset about something that probably we shouldn't have been upset about or been as pretty much stimulated. When you talk to your kids now, or you talk to strangers as you're a coach, how do you help them normalize those needs of sense of urgency, anger, or other emotional outbursts when it shouldn't a normal situation shouldn't occur that?
So we didn't get where we are overnight. And as much as I would love to tell you, a week later, it'll all be magically cleared up. Those things, just like anything, have been put there over time. If we go to a cave, we see stalactites, stalagmites, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those didn't form over days and weeks to become what they are now. Those days and weeks contributed, and they were part of what over years and decades and centuries that we can now see. And it's a similar thing. We've had those behaviors, those messages ingrained. Repetition is, like how it gets put back there. It's like, well, I've heard this 100 times that I'm not enough. I'm a mistake. That must be true. And particularly when it comes from our parents or people we love, that's where it's like, instead of like one cut, it's like a one cut plus 10. You know what I mean? It carries a higher weight. So it's just start today. Don't worry about the end. Start with today. What's one thing that, as you look back over the last week, that has been a point you would have liked to have done something different, right? Well, I got in an argument with my wife. All right. How did that start? What was, where you see that things really went off the rails. Oh, well, she said this. Okay, let's take a look at it. And it's in talking through what's gone on and asking questions that you really start to uncover things. It takes time. And like we talked about earlier, there's going to be certain stuff that insulates us. And as we, over time, remove that insulation, we're then going to get into other stuff that we weren't aware of. And so it's almost, if we went to like Sequoia National Park, those trees didn't get to be that tall. It's the same thing with like our offenses, our deep rooted beliefs and how things get triggered. Those have built up over time. And so it's one, just step back, look for one thing that you can begin to understand. That awareness then helps you to pick up other stuff. It's almost like if I said, hey, Will, go look for people at the mall wearing blue. You're going to see stuff along the way that isn't blue. And that practice of being aware of what's going on around you, what's in your environment, will feed off. It's almost like a snowball going downhill, gaining more snow. That skill, you're not overwhelming and going, I want you to be aware of everything around you. Dude, I'm sorry. That doesn't happen. Start with something small, tangible, that you're able to see and not be fully drained by, right? And then from there, as you flex that emotional muscle, that mental muscle, you're then going to be able to pick up other things and contribute to, the overall growth, the healing. But it doesn't come overnight. And it's like, it would be almost like, Will, we're here on, New Year's Day. If I said, hey, I have been having problems with, you know, my heart, right? Will, by the end of this week, on the 7th of January, I'm going to have a whole new heart and it's going to be pumping like it should. It's going to be ideal. None of us would expect that. The other thing is, I will look at you different than I will look at myself. I will put unrealistic expectations on myself, whereas it's easier to show grace to other people, right? So if you came to me and said, hey, Mike, I'm going to, going back to the heart, I'm going to work on my heart in a week, I would look at you and go, Will, what are you missing? Like, that's not tangible. You'll make traction, you'll get progress, but there's no way you're going to do that in a week. But yet I would turn right around and tell you, hey, Will, dude, I'm going to fix this in a week. We're going to be good to go. Life is going to be great. I'm setting myself up for failure to put myself to have fuel for those beliefs of, it's not tangible. It's not for me. They were right. They said I'm not enough and I couldn't do this. They were right. It keeps us imprisoned in those beliefs and in the past by not giving ourselves enough space to stumble and fall, or to have enough runway to start seeing the changes. You're not going to see like, hey, I got from Pee Wee Herman to Arnold Schwarzenegger in a month. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go to the gym, it's going to take some time. Be willing to give yourself the time to get there. You didn't get to where you are overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight, but you will make, growth, traction, change. The transformation will come. People will pick up on it. That, that internal growth is occurring, but you got to give it time.
I like the analogy of what you were talking about, seeing blue in the mall. And then I was thinking about the trauma responses of if you're walking by a baseball field and they're just hitting balls in practice, and if we're worried about being beaten, we're thinking about somebody welting us with a ball or hitting us with a bat or
Mhm.
being chased down by people with cleats. And we're not able to actually just see the children or the adults just practicing. It actually really skews the lens of the rest of the reality. So walking past them, we feel unsafe. We feel not healthy. And then how it is we're able to grow as a human. We're able to
Mhm.
start to change the self narrative. It becomes this huge blessing. It becomes this blessing to be. Hmm, I'm not going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger in a month. Might never be Arnold Schwarzenegger in a year. But
Mhm.
my little puny arms as Pee Wee Herman, I can still get a little bit bigger, and I might need to get a new suit top.
It's if you don't try, you won't know.
Hmm.
Last November, and by last, sorry, November of 2024, my left knee, Will, I could not go 1 foot down a step and then, put my other foot down on the next step. I literally had to put my left foot on a step, put the right foot on the step because my left knee um, would not hold my weight without the pain. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
As far as, walking. And it's like, okay, I've decreased my blood pressure. I've started making these other changes. I want to be able to, you know, be in much better shape.
Hmm.
That was November of 24. I ran air quotes because most of it was hobble and walk. Took me like between 55 minutes and an hour. That is slow. that was super slow because it's like you've got, you know, 20 minutes per mile. You can walk that much. Like you could set out walk, you probably could have beat me, Will. That was one of those of I needed to figure out how to remove the knee pain. And in that, it was uncomfortable exercises, right? Walking on a treadmill backwards, that hurt the knee. Doing tibial raises, like, leaning against the wall, raising your toes, that hurt. The process of bringing healing and strength to that knee was not comfortable, far from it. But I ran a 5K every month until November of 25. Instead of running an 18, 19-minute mile, I ran a 14. I made progress in a year's time. And that's the thing is we're looking at the change in our life. We need to kind of keep an eye on where have I made progress? Okay, it's not as much. It's not as much as I want. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm still making progress. Now, the thing along the way, Will, in mid January, I had 2 tears in my right retina. Had that lasered, couldn't run for almost 4 months. I walked my 5Ks. I still wanted to show it for myself and keep my promises to myself. That was important to to me in keeping that overall goal. Finally got to doing a bunch of other stuff, got back to running everything. Then in August, 3 weeks before I was scheduled to do an adventure race with my family, so my brother's flying out from Washington to Kansas. Um, 3 of my children, 2 of their spouses, we're all going to do this adventure race. I end up having in my left eye the retina pulled away from the back of the eye. Fortunately, it didn't cause me to stop from being able to participate. But it was one of those of, hey, you can't work out, you can't run, you can't do leaning, even leaning over. I couldn't do for that 3 weeks leading up to it. So it was like, don't do this stuff so that you can do this. Got it. Cool. Had another incident a couple months ago um, where I had some bloodshot. Looked like, you know, if you and I had gotten in a fight, Will, it looked like you had landed a great punch. My eye was totally bloodshot. And so I had three things that came up along the way in the journey. They're not helping my progress. They're, in fact, putting me behind on my progress. And the thing that was more the struggle than the physical was the mental and emotional, because I was afraid I was going to lose my eyesight. And I already have tinnitus from a firecracker that was misthrown by a younger kid and went off. And so I'm like looking at it going, one, I may lose my hearing, I could lose my sight, and I'm totally unable to participate in life. I'm alive, but without sight, without hearing, I'm left to touch. And so I'm like a toddler. I mean, every toddler learns by feeling and putting it in their mouth. I don't want to be putting things in my mouth like that. So I'm left with touch, right? So it's one of those, the big fear that came along with that was my dad, like we talked about earlier, he was in security. And to keep himself up at night, he was drinking one of those, tall thermoses 5 nights a week, Will. He's drinking hot chocolate. No surprise, he ends up with diabetes. Well, from that, his retina detached. He hated doctors so much, he waited 3 months before he went to see a retinal surgeon. And they told him, we could, try and laser it 3 different times, put it back into place, and it may not improve your eyesight. That message from one thing that happened to my dad carried a lot of weight, built up additional fear. But it was also one of those of, I could see I was in a different place, Will, because before I would have just given up. I would have said, I'm done. There's no hope for me, because I saw 2 retinal surgeons and an optometrist, and I was like, what can I do? What is there that I can do that's preventative, so I'm not visiting you going, hey, here's a green light, I'm lasering it back in place. What can I do? Nothing. You just have to wait. You have to wait. And if it happens, come back in. I don't want to go through my life waiting for a shoe to fall to then be sidelined. Like, hell no. I want to live my life. I want to be proactive and invest and do stuff. Well, I never would have done that before. I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think it mattered. I didn't think I could get a good result. And so sometimes it's not just not being triggered, not having somebody that's able to get your goat. Sometimes it's being able to show up for yourself in ways that you never would have before. And so it was asking questions, and dude, I did more research. I know more about supplements and eyeballs than I ever wanted to know. But I have that ability, and I figured out how to do it. And it's one of those of, are my eyes in the place I want them to be? Not yet. Not yet. But I've started taking the actions, and those actions will get me to that place I want to be. I'm at least going down fighting. I don't care. But I'm showing up in ways I never would have before, Will. And so it's not just being a victim, but it's also being that warrior that shows up to fight for you when nobody else was there fighting, when you needed somebody. And now you can do that for yourself.
Love that. It sounds like you had to recognizing that all the stuff that made you grittier, that you actually learned how to be more resilient to be able to handle this. The stuff that the internal courage that took you to start to understand about your emotions, delaying the gratification, then also becoming proactive to be able to change it, started to pay huge dividends when another crisis happened, when it was like, ooh, this is going to, you showed up for yourself. You showed up for yourself with a lot of love. When you actually take the chance and you think about this, how do you help people in the profession of being a coach start to realize it's okay to show up for yourself, even though no one else showed up for you? How do you help people as a coach see that?
I think some of it is self-realization as they start coming across situations. Part of it is being a mirror for them that gives them a different perspective. Because oftentimes, as we're healing, we don't see the full picture of, what things mean. The it's almost like if we took it back, Will, like, um, hey, you got this promotion at work. That's awesome. Not realizing the investment that was made along the way and what that means about, hey, you have discipline, you have a work ethic, right? It's all these things that contributed to it. We don't see the full value of what we've done or who we are in that we've done it. And so sometimes it's just bringing a light and saying, hey, I I want you to now recognize this and not just kind of dismiss it because it's you, right? Kind of going back to how we talked earlier about being able to see things more realistically and giving grace for other people. We often will dismiss or discredit the great things that we do or even
Mhm.
good things that we do. We just kind of count it as less, right? When, hey, let's really recognize the value. Let's celebrate your wins and not just acknowledge that you had a win. Um, those kind of things are then what help us to see, hey, yeah, I can do this bigger challenge over here that I've been wanting to. I can stand up for myself. I am worth standing up for. And it's once you see yourself differently, you'll start investing in yourself differently and giving yourself a higher value. But it often requires somebody being there with us um, in ways that we're not used to having to just point those things out. It's just a different angle, I guess is the best way to say it. It's there, it's a truth, but we just may not be looking at it to see it.
I'll say being in survival mode is the truth. Actually, being able to have self love is truth. There is a multitude of areas that are truths, just depending on which one has been exercised more to be able to be needing to protect ourselves. And then how we communicate. If we watch our parents, they emulate or they role model the anger, the animosity, the hey, we have a problem of we have a food shortage or we don't have money. Let's lock up the fridge.
Mhm.
It stops the problem, but then it also
Yeah.
has a huge blowback on other areas. And it sounds like when you are talking about this with other people, but then talking about with yourself, is learning how to slow down in certain areas to, and then also be uncomfortable in the changes when you are now
Mhm.
adding in another prism to look through. Understanding what wolf that you feed, is it the negative wolf or is the positive wolf? What is the prism that you're looking at? It's like, how am I going to look through this part of the goggles compared to this part of the goggles? And becoming familiar with the different clarity or the different hues that it's actually showing us. And as a coach, I find it to be really interesting because a therapist can actually speak to you in a certain language, and then a coach will speak to you in a different language. And
Mhm.
sometimes, depending on where we are in our journey, we might need both. We might need one more than the other. And it's also knowing how to end a relationship with a therapist or end a relationship with a coach. When you are finalizing your clientele, is there a certain
Mhm.
goal that you know in your mind of, hey, they don't need me anymore? Or what does that look like to you about saying that I appreciate the time that we get a chance to spend together, but we should terminate our services? What does that look like to you?
Yeah. I will normally talk with the guys and go, what's your goal? And when they've reached that goal, like, okay, is this where you want to finalize things as far as are you satisfied in life, or is there more? Like, if I approach a coach for running, right? Hey, I just want to get to a 12-minute mile. To have the coach, you got here. Is this what you want, or do you want more? I want a 10-minute mile. Cool. There's so much ability that a coach can provide. Like, you're going to provide different than I'm going to provide. It's with everybody, right? You go to a mechanic, one mechanic's going to be maybe in brakes, somebody else might be in engines. Everybody has something that they're more versed at that comes easier for them. So I'll usually, in talking with the guys, how are things going? Where are we going? But the other thing is that I'm looking at is, am I actually able to help you? Because if we've reached a point where I'm not skilled in that, I'm going to tell you, hey, Will, I see that we've made this progress all the way along, man. You've crushed it. You were here, you're now here. The next place you're wanting to go to, I don't think I can get you there. There's some other guys that they're coaches or, therapists or communities that may be more beneficial to get you to your next place. And I'm happy to work alongside of you to figure out, what does this look like? What's going to get you there? But I don't think it's going to be me. And being able to say that, like, I mean, I know my boundaries, my capabilities, I guess. I'm not gifted in everything. Nobody is. There are certain strengths and certain weaknesses, but knowing where a guy wants to get to, having that clarity helps in being able to understand from my side. Am I the one to help you get to that next finish line? No, absolutely. It depends, right? But also, knowing when they're like, I feel like I've made enough progress, I'm gonna take a break, or I'm done. I just, we need rest. Maybe this is a season of rest that you need to go into to recharge to go to the next one. It there's two people involved in that relationship. I think it needs to be discussed by both in order to make the best decision. But the one ultimately that needs to make that decision is the man that's looking, for that change, that transformation in their life, because it's their life and they're the one that's putting in the work. I can coach somebody, but if they're not wanting it, it's a waste of time. It's not going to benefit them, and it's not going to stick. So the person looking for the coaching has to be the one in the driver's seat.
So I'm looking at the time. I know that we had a certain cutoff time, and we're creeping up on it very quickly. So that being said, what is the message that you have to the listeners and the future listeners?
Believe in yourself. Even though you may not feel like you're worthy of being invested in, or that change is possible, it is. And the journey through it can be challenging. There's going to be times you're going to want to quit, give up, toss it all away. Stick with it. It is absolutely worth it in so many ways that when we're in the fight, you can't see. And if you feel like you're at a spot where, hey, I don't have the belief in myself, find somebody who does. This is not a lone wolf process, right? It's not a lone wolf event. Get somebody that can do like a 3-legged race with you, that knows where, hey, this is the path to get to, and these are some of the hurdles we're going to face. But dude, we're totally going to get there. rely on that person, whether it's a therapist, a coach, a friend, multiple friends. You don't have to do this alone. But getting there, dude, it opens so many doors. And I really hope that you will take that first step and continue taking the next one, even if that's 21st steps. Dude, the places you will go, like as Dr. Seuss said, right? It's worth it. You can't see it from here, but just start healing, start that investment in yourself.
It's beautifully said. It is Dr. Seuss, man. The man had a lot of wisdom. He also had some short-sighted views on things, so people rip him up and down with. Well, that happens. But he was just such a bright dude. And the thing I like about Dr. Seuss, which most people don't know, I think he failed either 13 or 17 times before he actually got his hit into books. A lot of times people don't realize these amazing individuals failed way more times than they actually succeeded. Well, Mike, looking at the time, I wanted to say I appreciate you. And yes, your voice is very relaxed. And tell your wife that she's a lucky woman. And I appreciate you.
I
Man.
will. I will, send you a check for that one, and I'll play it just to remind her. she's got the dude, with the soothing voice. So I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you very much for your time, and for those listening, thank you for your time. And just really encourage you, take that first step. Keep going. You're worth it in every way.